Shalom, I'm Richard Schwartz, President Emeritus of Jewish Veg and the author most recently of this book, Vegan Revolution, Saving Our World and Revitalizing Judaism. And this is just one of many. I'm trying to interview as many of the key environmentalists and veg activists and animal rights activists as I can, the whole series. And it's a real pleasure today. We have a real special guest, Rabbi Gabriel Cousens. And if I gave you his whole history, you'd think it's impossible for one person to do it. He's not only a rabbi, he's a doctor, written many books, and he's helped reverse diseases like diabetes, other diseases, and a tremendous amount, written articles, and he's been very kind to me, reviewed some of my books and all. So, Rabbi Gabriel Cousens, welcome to our program. And I understand you'd like to start with a prayer, and that's always very appropriate.
So first, I want to start by acknowledging your great work in the world and uplifting and spreading the vegan message. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
So this is a prayer about merging the heavens and the earth and the heart and the mind, which is key to understanding veganism at a deeper level. And it's part of the morning prayer. Okay, here we go. L'shem kudashav rihu ushenate bi'ilaihed shemuke belavke b'yudah shalom Hashem kozreel kolam amen.
Amen.
Feel the merging of heart and mind, and now we're ready.
Okay, well, very important, and you've got a great heart and great mind, doing wonderful things. So I'd like to find out, you've done so many things. How did this all get started, and what's the story behind your amazing career of being such a wonderful activist?
Well, in a way, certainly my parents, I grew up in Chicago, were that way. And I got more and more involved. But the key turning point, even though I started to become vegan in 1973, about 49 years ago. And when I was meditating in 1975, a little voice, the small silent voice of God came through, literally, and said, you should learn to eat in a way that supports your spiritual life. That was it. And that got me started, because now I've got a directive. It just came spontaneously. And as I did my research, and as you know, I've written 13 books on spiritual nutrition and so forth, it got clearer and clearer that the vegan way is the most powerful diet for supporting spiritual life. I mean, we have a history. We have what we have in Gan Eden. And then God tried to move Israel and Exodus getting back, and showing the manna, which is the kind of living gift of food of God's grace for people. Because what we eat actually enhances our spiritual life, but actually when we bite into no death, that's key for understanding veganism, no death, misery, or pain, we are biting into the sacredness of all life and to the living planet. So we become one with that. So that became part of my understanding. It's like we can eat in a way that we can become superconductors of the divine, and we can become in real relationship with the planet, and we're not doing any harm. That's a pretty big deal. But my list of why I do it starts with spiritual life. So as I did the research, I began to see its effect on me. And I was working with many people, thousands of people. And I saw that when they gave out meat, fish, chicken, dairy, their spiritual life began to blossom. Now, I look at it a few different ways, but one of the ways I look at it is that there are, in the Ruach level, in the Yitzhak level, astral plane level, there's spiritual channels. Everybody has it. Nothing special. But when we eat meat, fish, chicken, and dairy, we block those channels. And those channels are through which the Shekhinah energy flows. The Ruach HaKodesh flows. So when we're eating death, we're taking it in all the 5 levels. Now, I said 5 levels. There's 5 levels of soul in the Torah tradition. All 5 levels are negatively affected by eating death. We're taking death into our consciousness. And I'll kind of say it a slightly different way. When we kill an animal, we're creating pain, fear, and misery. But guess what? When we eat that pain, fear, and misery goes into us and it agitates our mind. So part of spiritual life is you have to have a quiet mind. You're doing no harm, but also you're having a quiet mind. You're not taking in pain, fear, and misery. So it gets more clear that the best diet, and it's true in every tradition actually, around the world is a vegan diet. Now, surely we saw it in Gan Eden. God tried again in Exodus to get people back. There was resistance. They weren't really ready. Moses Maimonides talks about it, the great medieval physician, lived 12th century to 1130 to 1204. He says, eventually we'll get back to it because that's the directive. God is being nice to us. It's like, but the directive is to get back to Gan Eden diet. So I take that. He's a rabbi. He was a rabbi and a physician. So he's an important figure for me. And it's like, he's giving deep Torah wisdom. And we know eventually in the Messianic times, we will return to that. But we should start returning now, because the more people who are holding that energy, the more we open up the door for Messianic times. So that's kind of an outer spiritual reason. The inner spiritual reason is I find that it quiets the mind, it purifies the mind, clarifies our thinking, and helps one really go deeper into the truth of who we are. Now, when you eat an animal, you're taking its animalistic ego structure. People say don't eat the blood. Well, you cannot not eat the blood if you're eating flesh. I mean, blood is in the flesh, okay? In the smallest capillary. So we're taking the soul of the animal into us, and that lowers our soul energy. Now, yes, humans, animals have soul, but it's not quite the same. In my understanding is that the human soul is meant to evolve at a certain level. Animal souls also evolve, as far as I'm concerned. But we don't want to take the animal ego into us to lower our consciousness. We want to raise our consciousness. So it's death and misery, but it's also taking an animal soul. So that's another reason why it's important for spiritual life. So we talk about clear our mind, and we talk about the sacredness. So we're not biting into death, but we're also not taking the animal soul. So those are how I began to evolve the spiritual. And as a scientist, as I said, I've written 13 books, and published in biochemistry and biophysics when I was at Amherst College. It was like, it became very obvious. This is by far the best diet for spiritual life. So that's kind of the beginning of that. Now, a lot of people don't think about it, but that's my number one focus is spiritual life. So we look at the Torah, and if you look behind me, you can. But basically behind me, you can't see it, but there's a Torah, an ark that's there too, because that's coming behind. So what's the Torah framework? And some of my kind of heroes, like the Baal Shem Tov, who said, when the body ails, the soul too is weakened, and one is unable to pray properly, even when clear of sins. Thus, you must guard the health of your body very carefully. That's a clear statement. Now, Moses Maimonides says the welfare of the soul can only be achieved after attending to the welfare of the body. So I'm inspired by these great thinkers. So, okay, let's talk about the welfare of the body. And there's no question that this preserves personal health and really the health of everyone. I want to go into that a little bit more on kind of multiple levels, okay? There are other reasons, and I don't want to forget those. We may not get to them, but I don't want to forget them. So we feed the hungry, essence of sharing. 44,000 kids die each day. If the whole world would go vegan, we'd have enough food to feed the world 7 times over. There is no food shortage if we go vegan. So we feed the hungry. We protect, obviously, against animal cruelty, another important Torah teaching. We protect the ecology, and that's a much bigger discussion. We maintain the functioning of our mind and our body and inner peace because we're not taking in pain and misery, okay? And I mentioned clearing the inner circuitry. And we're minimizing waste, Baal Tashit. So there are multiple levels that we, by being vegan, achieve. But I'm going to focus a little bit more on health because that's more my focus in general. So I'm going to talk about something that doesn't usually get talked about. It's called There is a Cure for Diabetes. This is a vegan-based, no meat, fish, chicken, or dairy. Okay, and many people have seen the movie that was out 2007. But basically, the message with that is that we, using a vegan diet and organic, I want to clarify, organic is really important. And I'm going to interrupt myself to say, meat has 15 times more pesticides and herbicides and toxins than vegan, okay? 95 to 96% of flesh food has that. And I'm talking about even organic fed beef and all that because they're still higher on the food chain. Obviously, they're going to accumulate more toxins. Now, what are the ramifications of that? Hey, how about the fact that PCBs destroy sperm? How about the fact that we're talking about the continuation of the human race? And one of my points about going vegan is that we preserve the germ cell, the sperm and the ovum, because they are compromised, seriously compromised by pesticides and herbicides. So more and more men are going sterile. That's a pretty important point called continuation of the race. Okay, and multiply, right? Be happy and multiply. Well, you can't do that if you're infertile. So that's an important piece most people don't think about so much. Okay, so personal health and vitality. I'm going to start with something that isn't usually talked about, and that is the health of children. So when I was running the Tree of Life back in Patagonia, Arizona, we had a master's program. What we found in vegan women compared to meat-eating women, okay, and that's a kind of key concept, is that the vegan women's children were healthier. Now, they are in the top percentage of weight and also height when they're born. And then at 4 months, they're close to the upper, let's say 42, depending for height and weight. Weight, they're already at the top. So I'm going to say at 4 months, they're in the top 5% of weight. And at 4 months, they're also in the top 35% of height. Now, why do I bring that up? Because everybody's worrying, I'm a vegan mother, what am I going to do? And you're hurting your children if you're doing a vegan thing. That's not true. What I'm saying is vegan children do quite well. From vegan pregnant mothers, they do quite well in the bigger picture. I want to point out one other thing that is a little bit more technical, but since 1973, when I began doing this direction, 49 years, okay, I have only had one person who hasn't been successful as a vegan. Now, why? Well, we have to include the fact that we have each person has unique genetics. Some people need more protein, some people need less protein, and we have to eat according to our constitution. So everyone, 99.999%, the one person who couldn't do it was a person who lived near the Arctic Circle. Okay. And she had to have one fish per week. But, 99.99% of thousands of people were and are successful on a vegan diet. But you got to balance according to your constitution. Everyone has a unique constitution. I write about that in my book, so I'm not here to promote that, but it's in Conscious Eating and it's in The Cure for Diabetes and so forth. Okay, that's an important little piece to understand. So we can be highly successful. All this, I couldn't do it as a vegan. Well, that's because you weren't doing it right. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I've kind of mastered that, focus so people can be 99.99%. Okay, now the next kind of the pieces I cover, the kids do better. Dr. Spock, do you remember Dr. Spock?
Sure.
And what he said is the vegan diet is the best diet for children. Mm-hmm. Now, most people haven't heard that, but it's true. I didn't meet him personally, but it's true. I saw the statement. So a vegan diet for children is the best diet for their health and overall well-being. So that's an important statement for Dr. Spock to say. And not a lot of vegans are talking about that. It's important. Okay, so there's other parts of the health, and maybe I'm going to talk about myself for a moment. So my current age, chronological, is I'll be 79 in a few months. So when I was a captain of an undefeated Amherst College football team at age 20, I could do 70 push-ups and 500 sit-ups and 7 pull-ups. So at the age of 79, like this morning, I did my 1,300 consecutive push-ups.
Wow.
And so what happens? I'm a vegan. I'm getting stronger and healthier. I also can sit in full lotus. I couldn't do that when I was 20. So I just got stronger and more flexible with chronological age. What's my message here? Vegans can be strong and robust. And also for doing chin-ups, I went from 7, I've done as many as 100. Usually I run around 80. But that's test of strength. And I do this morning my 900 sit-ups in a short time. My point is, with age, if we're doing what we're supposed to do, as a vegan, you can get stronger and more flexible. That's counter to what people think. Okay, that's the point I'm trying to make here. So that's another mythology. So vegans should not think that, I'm vegan, I'm going to get weak, and thin and frail. No, not at all. We know that vegans have better health. In terms of cancer, it varies from 2 to 4 times less cancer, depending. So eating meat, you get 4 times more bowel cancer. Okay. And I'm not going to do all the cancers. It's more if you're eating meat. In terms of diabetes, which is one of my specialties, curing it naturally, meat eaters have 35 to 50% more type 2 diabetes. That's a very important statement because diabetes is an epidemic in America, really, and also Israel, around the world, actually. So just going vegan, you're going to cut down your percentage by a huge amount. Now, one of the things people don't know about, and I won't get into too detail with it, is fish fat actually is the number of all the foods is the most toxic to the beta cells of the pancreas, which make insulin. After that, now think what I just said. I said fish fat. People think fish is healthy. Fish fat is the number one killer of the beta cells of the pancreas. Then after that, we have animal fat in general, and then also animal protein follows that. Okay, so they actually destroy the beta cells of the pancreas. Oh, is that important? Yeah, I mean, when you think 35 to 50% of the people, who are eating meat, there's that much higher rate of meat eaters getting diabetes. I'll just mention one more medical thing because we can go on forever on this one. Because there's so many medical things, right? It's like, okay, high blood pressure. 26% of meat eaters have high blood pressure. 2% of vegans have high blood pressure. That's important. Vegans also live longer. Some studies show up to 7 years longer. Other studies show women live 4 years longer and men live 3 years longer. So there's some variation, but vegans live longer and generally are more healthy. Osteoporosis. Oh, you need to eat meat. No, that's totally backwards. Meat-eating women have 4 times as much osteoporosis as vegan women. Now, that's important because there's a myth saying you need to eat meat so you don't get osteoporosis. That's backwards. Why? Because meat is high in phosphorus and it pulls calcium out of the bones. So it's pretty well established, 4 times higher osteoporosis if you're a meat-eating woman, and about twice as much if you're a meat-eating man. So there we go again. We're looking at that. So, and I'm just going to get back to diabetes for a second. The research shows that even if you're eating 3% of your diet meat, meat-eating women are going to have 4 times as much diabetes as vegetarian women. 4 times as much, and meat-eating men twice as much, even if you're only eating 3% and men 8%. So even a little bit does cause a problem. So going easily vegan is good. Now, my experience is for most people, it takes a little time. So I've been doing this 49 years. It took me a few years to kind of work it all out. You've got to pay attention to your diet and how it is working for you, how do you adjust the protein. It's important. But that's the physical part of it then, which is pretty exciting, is that we could make a huge difference in the quality of our life, our longevity, our ability to reproduce. So that is kind of obviously pretty good. Now, I mentioned Feed the Hungry. I work a lot in Africa. I have diabetes programs in Africa, and we're basically, people are very open to the vegan way, just so you know. So, for example, in Cameroon, we have over 60 organic veganic farms. It catches on. People like it. It's easy, and they get healthy. So we are getting people to grow their own organic veganic farms in 5 different countries in Western Africa. So they get, actually, it's easier for Africans to get it because Americans are too used to eating meat, right? And Israelis are, no, they're used to not eating that much meat. So it wasn't that difficult to get people to switch over. But I'm saying a consciousness, because we go into organic farming, which at the Tree of Life in the US, we kind of pioneered veganic farming. Now, veganic farming does not even include animal-based fertilizer. And so we were highly successful. And we're doing it here too. There is farms here that we're connected with. Highly successful in terms of organic farming. Not hard to do. Okay. And so I'm just kind of giving people a little pep talk about, wait, you can do this. Don't, and you can do it without any animal fertilizer. Because you're going to do it, we are kind of purists in a way. It's like, okay, no animal fertilizer. So we feed the hungry. Obviously, if it's veganic farming, no animals are involved, no animal cruelty is involved. And the other thing is about protecting the ecology. Earth is the Lord's, pretty clear statement. And we see that one hamburger McDonald's, destroys 55 square feet of rainforest. We look at resources. The meat eater, one steak is like 4,500 gallons versus the vegan meal, 300 gallons. So, there's a big thing about water. A vegan saves over 1 million gallons of water a year. So that's water. Air, we know that animal agriculture with the methane, 27 times more carbon dioxide, and with nitrous oxide, 396 times more. It's like, whoa, carbon dioxide. So animal agriculture really increases global warming gases, somewhere between 21 and 51%, different estimates, but it's still an increase. So we avoid that problem. So we just talked about water. Land, 14 vegans can live on the land that one meat eater can live on. That's pretty important too. In terms of feeding the world, I already mentioned we can feed the world 7 times over. So these are kind of statistics to give an impression. 85% of the agriculture in the world is for meat-based. Vegan takes 5%. So we really preserve it in that way. And the data goes on, but I'm kind of giving an overview, okay, that in terms of the Torah directives, preserve your health, and I include the germ cell, which we don't usually talk about, preserve your personal health, feed the hungry, protect against animal cruelty, compassion, protect the ecology, Baal Tashit, don't waste anything, maintain your inner peace, which is, I think, part of it, and really eating for spiritual life. So these are some of the kind of overview that I see that the vegan diet makes plays a big role in supporting that. We're not done. You have more questions, but I'm going to leave this with people to think about. In every generation, Hashem gives us the medicine for that generation. Every generation, Hashem gives us the medicine. And this generation, and in future, going into Messianic times, veganism is the medicine for healing the world now and into the future. So that's how I feel about it in different ways. Okay, you can ask some questions. I know I talked a lot, but.
Well, we can say what a powerful, powerful message and all. And I wish if everybody could hear it and take heed to it, what a much better world we'd have. So my question is, given all that veganism is best for our spiritual life, it's best for our body, for our health, for the environment, for the hungry, for the animals, how do we get that message out to people more effectively? And especially now that I'm glad you've joined me here and a lot of other vegans in Israel. They say Israel is the vegan capital of the world in many ways. Yeah. How do we get that message out? And do you have any specific ideas about getting it out specifically, and especially in Israel?
Okay, it's a good question. So Israel is meant to be a light to the nations. We've heard that one before, right? Israel is without a doubt the world leader in veganism. There's more vegans in Israel than anywhere in the world. Okay, I think that's what the statistics suggest. So I would build on that and work as much as possible, through as much education as possible, to increase the amount of vegans in Israel. And it's more teaching and education. People do care about their bodies. They do care about their minds. So one of the things I'm interested in doing is being part of as much education as possible. So I've actually moved to Israel. My wife and I have moved here. We took Aliyah in 2007, but it just took us a while to get here. But now we're here full time, with all the documents. We're almost through with all the documents, but okay, more than a few documents. But I'm very interested in working with vegan groups here in Israel to really begin to promote it on these multiple levels. Beyond health, it's like, well, for spiritual life. And we know there's a variety of rabbis, like Rav Kook and his son. I mean, Rav Kook did eat one bite of meat on Shabbat just to honor everybody else, but he was a vegan. Okay, so he's the founder. He left his body in 1935, but he was pre-Israel nation founder of the vegan movement in that way. So we have a very rich history for this country. And I would just focus on expanding it by educating and inspiring as many people as possible. That's how I would approach it. And then from that, Israel becomes more and more alike to the nations around this particular issue.
Mhm. Okay, sounds great. Great to have you here. And
I'm saying I'm happy to do a lot of teaching here in Israel.
okay,
I don't personally have all the contacts, but we're talking, and I'm happy to speak where people get me.
And based on your wonderful suggestion, we're going to have a meeting as we speak here this coming Sunday evening with many vegans in Israel. And Israel has laws on animals way beyond what others have, as you say, vegan capital. So it's a great, great start. And the former president of Israel, Reuven Rivlin, was a vegetarian. The present chief of staff of Israel, Kohavi, is a vegan. And also, by the way, the Minister of the Environment now, Tamar Zandberg. So we've got Minister Lone Tao, main environmentalist, now an MK. So having you here, great start. We're going to make a great, great difference. Okay, so look forward.
And I will be there. I will be part of that meeting. So I'm happy about it.
We want you and others, because we have the case. And I always say we have truth, morality, and justice on our side, all the positives. The other side has money and they do terrible things and mislead people. I'm here at a retirement village in Protea Hills in the Shoresh area. We've had speakers, but unfortunately, they're not getting the message out. We had one here that said, you got to eat eggs. Eggs are really a very healthy food. And, there's such misinformation. So we need you and others to get this message out.
Just a little point. I live in Pardes Hana Karkur.
I'm sorry.
I live in Pardes. My wife and I live in Pardes Hana Karkur.
Uh-huh.
So we're in that area, in this part of the country.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a lot of vegan activity here, so which makes me happy. It's good.
Yeah, well, but as you know, there's a tremendous move in that direction, especially among the young people, much more women in terms of instead of men. Now, one of the points I've been making recently, it's much easier to become vegan now because there's so many plant-based substitutes for the animal foods. As you know, they're not the healthiest, maybe it's the transition. And they say that some of these plant-based substitutes have the texture, appearance, and taste so similar to the meat products that long-time animal meat eaters can't tell the difference. So there's really no reason. Some say I just love the taste of meat. Well, they can get it still being a vegan because there's so many substitutes. It seems almost every day in the paper, weekly, there's reports. Israel is a leader, was a startup nation in this regard. So what are your thoughts about that? The fact that it's not the healthiest, but so I wouldn't recommend every day.
My thoughts are it's a place to start.
Yeah.
But there's more to it, which is when you're eating this live, active, organically grown food, you're getting a tremendous amount of energy from God. And that energy comes through the sunlight, and then it's converting into the inner light within ourselves. So as we eat real plant-based food, we're getting a lot of light that gets converted into the inner light for our own growth. So the bigger picture is it's a good start, but really the power of the veganic food is the much increased energy that's in it.
Mhm.
That's directly from the sunlight. So we don't want people to think, oh, well, I've got this taste, I like meat, because really there's a different taste, which is the taste of God. Okay. And when we bite into organic, vegan, fresh food, we are biting into the living planet and that taste of God. And that makes a big difference in terms of consciousness. But for a beginning start, as long as the message is that's not where you end, but that's where you start, I think it's okay. And that was.
Okay, so I want to ask you, as a rabbi, what are the most important Jewish teachings that point to veganism as the ideal? That Jews specifically, there's so many powerful Jewish teachings that should make Jews especially be vegan. So what would you say are some of the important Torah teachings?
Well, it kind of starts with Gan Eden. What was their diet? Okay. The whole idea of preserving life, preserving the well-being of your body, right, and of your mind. Be fruitful and multiply. Well, I added that in there, but that's a pretty clear teaching that the semen and the egg get compromised and pesticided. Okay. Again, protecting against animal cruelty, protecting the ecology. These are all very, very clear Torah teachings, Torah directives that we honor. And I'm going to say, know God, be still and know God. These are really deep teachings. So it does support spiritual life, which is ultimately what Torah is about, and getting us to know God. So I'm adding that as a bigger kind of emphasis. The Torah gives a foundation to know God. I mean, it's okay. So I would say those are the biggest teachings. Bal Tashid, no waste, no death,
yeah,
thou shalt not kill, or murder, all those things. It's pretty comprehensive.
Okay. Okay, well, you've made an unbelievably powerful case. If anybody wanted to get in touch with you, get more information, do you have a website you can let us know about, or an email address? Or
they can go to drcousins.com, drcousins.com, and that's easy. DRCOUSENS.
That's up on the screen.
And
people can see it up on the screen. It's right behind you, so people have that. Very good.
Yeah. Right. Okay. The other one is treeoflife.mn.co. treeoflife.mn.co.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so again, wonderful having you here in Israel. Looking forward to really working with you. And this is it. Would you agree that really the fate of humanity is at stake here? Because, as you know, there's been so much talk, more and more dire warnings by climate experts, temperatures going up. And the western part of the country where you work, California, for example, the wildfires, Louisiana hit with storms. It's like, but they used to say it's a 100-year storm. You can say once in 100 years, happening almost all the time. Just to report, the 7 last years was the 7 warmest in history. And more and more tornadoes, although theirs are not that 100% positive, but the impact. So would you agree that really this is a matter of life and death if we want a decent world for future generations? In addition, we mentioned about the ecology and all, but that is the most important thing. And as people are bringing out, by the way, you mentioned the methane from the cows, but the amazing thing is over 1/3 of the world's ice-free area is now used for grazing of animals and raising feed crops. imagine if that was when I was at, as we're talking now, it's the day after Tu B'Shvat, of course, the birthday of the trees. If that land was replanted with trees that could sequester the very dangerous carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, what a difference that would make. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's a pretty comprehensive statement you just made. I would start in a slightly different place, which is changing the consciousness of the public. Because when the public, sees the benefits comprehensively, then we're going to start living in harmony with nature, with God's planet. And rather than just a kind of fear-based, we're ruining the planet, which we are. And a vegan diet protects the planet, which it does. It's like, wait, what about your own consciousness? What about your ability to reproduce? The way we're going, the sperm count in America is less than 50% of what used to be. 1 or 2 more points down, and we're not going to be at 47%. We're not going to be able to reproduce. Well, this is pretty important. So there is the extinction of the climate, the earth on that way, but there's the extinction of humanity because we're not going to be able to reproduce because we're eating so high in the food chain that we're actually killing off our sperm and ovum. So just a few points down, and that's it. And the rate of infertility is really, really increased. So I would like to see, because vegans eat lower on that in a way the vegans will begin guiding humanity to live in a way that's in harmony on all levels, including the environment. So I kind of have this view: we have to change our consciousness. We have to survive, and if we don't produce sperm and ovum, and vegans will and do because we're lower, vegans will start to take over the planet, and we'll do all these things to be in harmony. So I'm not joking, actually, but it is kind of fun.
Well, as you know, according to Rob Cook, I think you mentioned it before, the Messianic period will be vegan. So maybe
that's right.
When they're being, if you say the vegans taking the planet, maybe that'll be the Messianic period will be here. Anyway, you've raised so many powerful points. And
I'm going to just mention one other thing. Not everybody knows how to be a successful vegan. So I'm still giving nutritional advice and meeting with people so they can work on their health and also learn how to be a successful vegan. So strength, vitality, these are really important things because you can't convince people to do something if you don't look healthy and you don't feel really strong and vital. So that is kind of work I'm doing as I work with people to do that. And they can reach me at info at treeoflife.nu because I want to be able to help people who want to make this transition. So nobody gets discouraged. Everybody can be successful.
Okay, fabulous. Okay, so again, thank you very much and wish you much success now that you're here in Israel, and look forward to working with you. And I think this year, 5782 in the Hebrew calendar, and 2022 has to be a turning point. And with you and so many other wonderful people here in Israel and vegans around the world, we're going to make a difference. So thank you.
I just want to bless you, Richard, for the great work you're doing. May it continue to expand and get more and more powerful. I want to bless all the listeners that we are tuned into God and are able to be very successful in the spreading of vegan consciousness and way of life to all of Israel and really all of the world. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Okay, so shalom from Israel, and look forward to working you with again.